Welcome back to our How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth life groups. We're closing in on our last couple of times together, and I hope as you have shared some of your stories and laughed together that you have created a strong and trusting bond within your groups. Part of that is because I'm going to ask you a little bit more of a difficult question today. Hardship is common to all of us, and while no one should seek after it lightly, the Bible promises that it will eventually fall on any Christian who lives sincerely. Can you share with your group a time when you felt abandoned or let down by God? The Psalms are recorded expressions to God that aid us in worship, praise, thanksgiving, and expression of sorrow. They're written in poetic form, and like all poetry, their shape helps to express their meaning. Hebrew poetry comes in its own shapes, both internally through the use of parallel and contrasting lines, and externally through their overall shapes. Psalm 88 is what we call a lament psalm. A lament includes a cry for help, a description of the problem, a formal petition, and a concluding praise or promise to praise. Let's read Psalm 88 together. Lord, you are the God who saves me. Day and night I cry out to you. May my prayer come before you. Turn your ear to my cry. I'm overwhelmed with troubles and my life draws near to death. I'm counted among those who go down to the pit. I am like one without strength. I'm set apart with the dead, like the slain who lie in the grave, whom you remember no more, who are cut off from your care. You have put me in the lowest pit, in the darkest depths. Your wrath lies heavily on me. You have overwhelmed me with all your waves. You have taken from me my closest friends, and have made me repulsive to them. I'm confined and I can't escape. My eyes are dim with grief. I call to you, Lord, every day. I spread out my hands to you. Do you show your wonders to the dead? Do their spirits rise up and praise you? Is your love declared in the grave, your faithfulness in destruction? Are your wonders known in the place of darkness, or your righteous deeds in the land of oblivion? But I cry to you for help, Lord. In the morning my prayer comes before you. Why, Lord, do you reject me and hide your face from me? From my youth I have suffered and been close to death. I have borne your terrors and am in despair. Your wrath has swept over me. Your terrors have destroyed me. All day long they surround me like a flood. They have completely engulfed me. You have taken from me friend and neighbor. Darkness is my closest friend. What value do you think Psalm 88 could have for the church today? One of my poetry teachers in college used to draw our attention to the white space. After we read a poem, he would ask us what emotions and feelings the poem elicited. That last line in Psalm 88 is powerful. Darkness is my only friend. Of course, darkness isn't anyone's friend, but we all know what the metaphor means. The psalmist feels desperately alone, and the closest thing he feels is the emptiness and cold of darkness. What makes this psalm particularly provocative for the eagle-eyed viewer is that it departs from the traditional formula of the lament psalm. Lament psalms are the most common kind of psalm in the Psalter. And normally they end with some declaration that God is going to intervene to accomplish some good. But not so here. The psalm ends without an expression of confidence and with the difficult statement, darkness is my closest friend. Why do you think the psalmist chose to end it this way? Suffering is common to the human experience. That's probably why there are more lament psalms than any other kind. The value of Psalm 88 for me is that it tells me that there is nothing wrong with wanting more from this world. It tells me that it's okay not to be okay. It gives me permission to express some of my deepest hurts to God. The hope in this psalm lies in the fact that the psalmist, no matter how broken and desperate, keeps coming back to God. And the hope for us as Christians is that even when our lament ends without hope for something better in this world, we have something to look to and long for in the next. One final note before I leave you. The author spent a little time talking about the imprecatory psalms. These are psalms that call down curses upon Israel's enemies. This seems to be in conflict with New Testament teaching about loving your enemies and blessing those who curse you. But the Old Testament and the New Testament are not that far apart. Let me read some Old Testament verses that illustrate this. Proverbs 24:17 says, "Do not gloat when your enemy falls. When they stumble, do not let your heart rejoice." Proverbs 25:21 says, "If your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink." Moreover, God promises justice in the New Testament. In 2 Thessalonians 1:6, Paul says that God is just. He will pay back trouble to those who trouble you and give relief to those who are troubled, and to us as well. The authors argue that it's okay for us to pray for justice, and it is not inconsistent to call for justice against our enemies because love doesn't have to do with feelings. They state, Jesus' teaching, however, defines love actively. It is not so much about how you feel about a certain person, but what you do for that person that shows love. The biblical command is to do love rather than to feel love. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Jesus frequently stresses the importance of living sincerely from the heart. You don't love someone, for instance, if you do something kind for them, but harbor resentment against them. Paul was more straightforward in 1 Corinthians 13:3. He said, you can go so far as to give your life up for someone and still not love that person. Elsewhere, Paul said that God's love is the kind of love that is poured out onto the heart. God's love, which is expressed through the Greek word agape, is an affection that biblically occurs on the inside and expresses itself in action if it is true. In my opinion, the New Covenant changes our relationship to the imprecatory Psalms slightly, because the cross makes all our human enemies potential children of God. Our real enemies, the New Testament says, are those powers and principalities that are at work raising up evil in the world. At the same time, it's healthy to pray for justice, a justice that will fall not only upon evil spiritual powers, but also upon people that have done evil things and rejected Christ. That justice will come not today, in the age of grace, where God gives good gifts to those who do evil and good, but when Jesus returns. That verse in 2 Thessalonians 1:6 that promises God will pay back trouble to those who trouble us concludes with this. This will happen when the Lord Jesus is revealed from heaven in blazing fire with his powerful angels. So when we see grave injustices happen in this world, like mass shootings, genocides, and abortions, it is right for us to pray for justice. But since we are Christians of a new covenant, our imprecatory prayer might look a little different Instead, we might pray, "Come, Lord, quickly." Have a great night, and don't forget to look for ways to encourage one another to love and good deeds.